This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
This episode of the G-Spot is sponsored by Playblue, Ireland's favourite adult store. Playblue.ie has a huge selection of adult toys as well as some deadly deals. There really is something for everyone, no matter what bits you have or what you're into. Check out playblue.ie today. This week on the G-Spot, I had the privilege of being joined by the wonderful, charismatic, charming, articulate Aoife Dunne. She's a content creator, she's a storyteller, she's a comedian, and she brought all of those skills to this episode. Honestly, I could listen to her talking all day. In fact, my lovely producer, Hilary, I'd say had a nightmare editing this episode because we couldn't stop chatting. Aoife is so empathetic, she's compassionate, but able to have the crack. We talked about some personal bits, some dilemmas, as always. I just know this episode is going to be a really, really good one. I know you're going to love it. Please make sure you're rating, you're reviewing, you're sharing, and enjoy your visit to the G-Spot. So welcome
Thank
officially. Did you have any hesitation about coming on a sex podcast out of interest? Was there any part you like, oh, I don't know what we end up talking about?
No, I think we can get into it later, but I've been through a journey with my own sort of like sex life, and I've had my struggles, and the only way I got through it was by talking about it. And I grew up in a household where it wasn't as taboo as it was in other Irish households.
Okay.
So I think I'm a bit more open. Now, when I told my boyfriend, he was like, oh, what are you going to be talking about? I think men are just automatically
all your secrets.
Are you going to tell everybody everything?
My boyfriend's like that. He's like, what are you putting on Instagram at the moment? I'm like, don't worry, nothing.
Because I also barely told him. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going on a sex therapist podcast. He was like, what? I was like, bye.
Deal with that. Oh my God, that's so funny. And how, when you say your household was like a bit like more open,
yeah.
What was that like? Was it that they would actually, openly talk about sex or relationships? Did you get more of the talk than, some people got nothing at all?
Well, interestingly, my parents were hippies. So you think that they would have been a bit more open about it. But she was more, I suppose mom was more open about the body. And she loved being naked walking around the house. So in that way, definitely things were more open in that sense. And then when she got her and my dad separated when I was in my teens, and then she got a boyfriend, and she was not shy about telling us how great their sex life was, and that was so difficult when you're a teenager. You're like, But now I look back, and now that you approach their age, you start to go, oh my God, thank God, I want good role models of healthy sex lives. So I suppose from that angle, I feel like it was compared to other people I know, it was less repressed. Still repressed in that there wasn't enough conversation around it. But I suppose in terms of I could see that my mom definitely, she enjoyed having a healthy sex life. And I know that was important to her.
Yeah.
Even as a teenager, if I was like, ew.
Yeah, you'd be exactly ew at the time, but then looking back, you're like, fair play.
Fair play,
good for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that definitely sounds a lot more open than what I'd say a lot of people would have been used to. It's so funny you mention your mom kind of walking around naked. My mom as well, I remember I used to be fascinated by her body, in a really curious way. I was like, it's amazing, and her boobs, and I was just like, it was just all so beautiful to me. And it's funny because I've talked to a few women who now have young daughters, they're, maybe 6, 7, 8. And when their young daughters see them naked, they're like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. And it's like, oh, when does that change?
No,
do you know?
It's so funny you said that. My friend said the same thing. And she was feeling guilty because she had gotten laser hair removal.
Right, okay.
And she was like, how do I explain to my daughters, because they're eventually going to get pubic hair.
Yeah,
but they know now that a woman's hair has, a woman's vagina has no hair on it or whatever.
Right.
So she's like, I don't know, I don't want them to feel shame around their pubic hair, but they'll know that mine is gone. And they she said when she's showering them, because they're only 2 and 4, but she's like, they're literally in awe. Because she'd be showering as well at the same time. Yeah. And she's like, it's so strange, but they really do look at you, and they're just like, wow,
I think that's
a woman's
lovely.
body. Yeah. I know. I'm like, where did we build the shame in then? Because eventually it just comes, doesn't it?
I know, it does come. And it's something I kind of try and tackle. I run a program for schools, sex education program, and it's hard to fit it all in the few hours, but I do try and touch on body image kind of throughout.
What ages would you be working with?
All ages. It runs kind of from generally, the youngest, let's say, would be about 5th class in primary school. So that could be 10, 11, upwards to, school leaving age or 18.
Amazing.
And then obviously I work with adults as well. But even from that young age, they're already getting ideas, about what their body should look like and worrying about weight. And now it's skincare.
Yes.
They're all obsessed with skincare and anti-aging.
Yes.
I actually didn't even think about this stuff, which is probably still very young, but till I was probably mid-20s, maybe early 20s, maybe a bit. Not really.
Not really.
Not
like my
any
skincare routine started like properly, like regimented from like 32, 33.
Yeah.
Before that, like I was like, okay, a bit of sunscreen, I was trying out moisturizers, but it wasn't like I'm taking this seriously.
Exactly.
But now you see all the girls. Yeah. I think it's too much. I don't know.
Yeah. It's almost like this generation now, like fat shaming is still there and that still exists, but it's almost like, and diet culture still exists, but it is the anti-aging obsession this generation's diet culture, if that makes sense, because there's such an obsession about it. Are they going to look back? The way we look back at like the 90s or noughties and those, the tabloid era of where they'd have all these women's bodies in the front and being like, oh,
we had to be so skinny.
You just circle everyone's cellulite and it was horrendous. And we look back and we're like, how did we have any sense of a normal body image coming out of that? I wonder, like young people nowadays, when they grow up, will they look back and think, how did we ever have a hope of, embracing aging when it was being like bombarded at us?
And do you think though we're to blame though as well? Because I've started using Botox recently, and even then I'm like, oh my God, am I not embracing aging? And a lot of women like our age have started using Botox and fillers. And I guess if they're looking at us as the role models of how to age.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know, maybe.
It's tricky because it's like you can do what you want with your body.
Exactly.
Like that's your choice. And I firmly believe that. But then I suppose maybe there's a difference between doing something and promoting it. So like we know that daughters, if they witness their mothers talking negatively about their own body, they are more likely to themselves end up with body image concerns and wanting to diet and whatnot. So I imagine it applies to if daughters, for example, see their mothers saying, oh, I'm so wrinkly, I'm so old, they're probably going to internalize that as well, I imagine. So yeah, I don't know. There's no easy answer to it.
No. Because even like I think like my mom again, like she was so body positive. If anything, her worry was that she was very slim, like naturally slim built. But that was a lot of stress for her. She hated being too skinny.
Yeah, same
and
with
so
my
when
mom,
we were curvy, she would like, when we started like to grow and like become teenagers and we were much curvier than she could, like, we don't take off after her in that sense. And she would just she'd go, oh, look at your beautiful butt. Oh, look at your gorgeous boobs. Oh, I wish I had boobs like you. And it was almost nice because she would celebrate your curves. But I don't I would say like, every girl, like millennial woman in Ireland, I don't think I have such an amazing appreciation of my body still, which is, it really is a shame. I hate that I'm 37 and I still struggle, not compared to like other people, but I know that internally I could be kinder. Yeah. But I think it's not from my family, obviously. And I think it is from, like you said, from the magazine culture, from growing up in a society that embraced being skinny above all else.
Above all else. Like it's a moral thing.
And it's just imprinted at such a dangerous age.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like that age of being a child and then into a teenager, it's like your key developmental years. And it's not that you can never learn to accept or even love your body, but I think it genuinely is a lifelong process. Yes. I think it's something you're just gonna, not you specific, anyone, myself included, has to just like keep on working on. Yeah. Because your body's gonna change as well, right? Yeah. So you kind of just, it's a lot of effort, but I do think it's worth it.
Yeah.
I do think if you can get to a place that, again, you don't have to love your body, but just even, not be obsessed with it.
That's it.
Hate it.
That's it.
Just be like, oh, it's part of me. Yeah. Some days I really like it, some days maybe I don't. And
I think it's the obsession, you're right.
It's the kind of,
needing it to be a certain way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And going back to sex education for a second, did you get any in school then? Any formal sex ed? No, nothing. No.
I remember when we were in junior cert cycle, and we were learning about the reproductive system. So I think it was year 3.
Right.
So we were in 3rd year and we had a male biology teacher and we had we were discovering like how reproduction happened. And there were 2 girls who were pregnant in the class. And then the whole class went, that's too late. There are already like teenage pregnancies
They're
here.
Literally pregnant.
Yeah. And we're only learning. And I remember that's when I only really knew. Like I knew that like sex led to a baby, but I didn't know how it happened.
Like the mechanics of it.
And so my only like recourse was like just stay far away from men as long as possible. Because
how long did that last?
Something about them makes you pregnant. I'm not quite sure. Maybe the way they look at you. I don't know. Their eyeballs.
That's
so
funny.
I lost my virginity very late. Like I was like 20. But I think
so was I.
Really?
Snap, 20,
and that was late.
Yeah, it felt like, looking back now, it was fine.
Yes.
Like, as in, it's an absolutely fine age. But like at the time, it felt I might as well have been 60.
Oh yeah.
No, I was like, oh my God.
Did you feel peer pressure from your friends mainly?
I'm trying to think. Like, I had vaginismus, first of all. So that was actually actively preventing me
at that age
from having, I had it from, like, I had severe primary vaginismus. So, and we're going to get into that for anyone listening who's not sure what it is. So like that was there from when I started to try and use tampons from like 14. So I actually couldn't have, like, let's say, penetrative sex. Anyway, but I really wanted to, and I didn't know I had vaginismus. So I just thought, like, what is wrong with me? I'm just like frigid, or I'm, and part of me knew that wasn't true, because I did kind of want to.
Yeah.
Because very horny, like, being honest. Like, I wanted to have sex. But yeah, no, I couldn't. And I feel like, there definitely was pressure. Not necessarily like directly on me, but I think just around me. There was so much talk around who's having sex, who's not, who's a slut, who's not. You were either a slut or you were, a frigid or a virgin. And then there was maybe a few golden girls in the middle who maybe had sex with one person, and that was fine. Does that make
those
sense?
were the girls that were in like relationships as teenagers, and then they had sex. They lost their virginity with that boy.
Yeah, and that was seen as socially fine.
Yes,
golden girl. I don't know where that phrase came from.
But I actually have people in mind. I'm like, I know who those are.
yeah. Like, they were. I don't feel they could disagree, but I don't feel they were judged as hard. Now, I had boyfriends, so I'd say people thought I was having sex. But yeah, no, I wasn't at that point.
Now you made me think, like, it took me ages to use tampons as well.
Yeah.
Like, I remember my mom literally having to insert it for me when I was a teenager to show me, because we were on holidays and I had been using pads like for years. And then I remember thinking, oh my God, I've got my period on holidays. I'm not able to enjoy my holidays. And she came in to try and help me. Poor mother, like, had to like manually insert the tampon for me while I was like, yeah. Like, when you're like, I don't know how old I was, maybe 15.
I know, yeah.
Like, oh my God, maybe that was vaginismus too for me, because I obviously discovered I had it later in life.
Right, yeah.
But maybe it's always been there and I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, but when you think about it, I suppose inserting a tampon, it's so unsexy, it's unerotic, like, your body's not aroused, right? You're not in a state of arousal, so even the muscles themselves in the vagina aren't going to be relaxed and chilled out. So it kind of makes sense that people who either end up having vaginismus or have vaginismus, like, might struggle a bit with using a tampon.
Yeah, I think I definitely had that as well, because like you said, it was like a lot of the girls around. It was just so much about like, who was having sex and who wasn't. And the conversations, I don't know, like when you talk to people from other countries, like a lot of my friends are Brazilian or Spanish, and they just, you share so much. Like, we have so much in common with these countries until a certain point, and then you talk about sex with them, and they're just, and even actually some like British people, again, we share so much, but they weren't raised Catholic. A lot of them were raised secularly. So they just don't have that shame around sex. So a lot of them would have lost their virginity much earlier in a really like beautiful way. Like, I remember one of my friends, he's from Venezuela, and he told me about like how he lost his virginity, and he was like, oh, it was the best day of my life. And he's like, and then, when you're a teenager and you're just having sex everywhere all the time. I was like, no. What? He was like, you're so horny, and you're like, this is fucking amazing. I was like, no, I was just riddled in shame. I didn't want it near me. And even the girls that were having sex weren't even really talking about it. Like, we just knew they were having it, but nobody was coming and sharing details. Like, even like, I've got to this point like where I'm like, how, like, I had to go and do a course recently on how to give a blowjob. I've been doing them. I'm like, a word to the wise, I have been doing them again.
But you said, I had to go to a course recently.
But I had to do it because I was like...
Was it for a job? Or
yeah, it was for a job. They're like, how good are you giving blowjobs? I was like, fine.
I'll do a course.
I'll do a course. Are you going to pay for it? Bit of CPD. I just couldn't... I'd lost my mojo when it came to blowjobs. I don't know what was going on. And it was like hit and miss. And I was like, I'm sick of this. I want to be better at this. So I did Jenny Keene's course on giving blowjobs. Anyways, so I paid whatever money, did the course, and it works. Okay.
Great.
Every time I'm like, success. So I was telling my Irish girlfriends and they were like, oh my God, tell us what like, how do you do it? And I was there explaining to them all in a bar, like I was holding, I don't know, something that looked like a penis. And I was there like, this is how you do it. And then when I was telling my Brazilian friends, they were like, they looked at me like I had two heads. They're like, you paid money for this? I was like, yeah. They're like, didn't you hear about this when you were like 15? And all the girls share like their blowjob secrets. No. And I was like, no. And they looked at me like, what? You didn't share sex secrets? You didn't share blowjob secrets? I was like, no one taught that way about sex. It was something like you had to do it and who's doing it. And yes, you're a slut. You're having it too much or you're having it too little. But we didn't embrace this beautiful thing like my friend from Venezuela who was just like, oh, it was gorgeous to be young and free and sexually active. Yeah. I was like, and part of me was judging him as he was telling me this story. I was like, oh, that's too much. Like, I was like, oh my God, we did grow up under this cloud of shame. Yeah. And we tried to sexually mature under a cloud of shame. Yeah. And no wonder, like, if you keep using the cloud metaphor, like the flowers aren't going to grow if there's no sun. And I just feel like then we get to our 30s now and you start to look at everything you've been taught and everything you do. And you're like, something was very broken when we were sexually maturing.
100%. And we have actually a dilemma about vaginismus. Yeah. So I'll read it out and we will respond. We will help as best we can. Sometimes I'm like, after the dilemma, I'm like, I feel like we've made it more confusing. But no, I feel like this will be good because we've both had an experience. So, hi Grace Alice. I'm a 26-year-old woman and I have a problem that's really impacting my confidence and my dating life. I suffer from vaginismus. It's quite severe and sex can be really painful or even impossible for me. Actually, I'm going to pause for 1 second. So anyone listening who doesn't know what vaginismus is, so as the medical way it's described, it's an involuntary contraction of the muscles in the vagina. So basically your vagina tenses up when you don't want it to. Yeah. And you might want to have sex or, like we said, put in a tampon, but your vaginal muscles, which are really strong, tense up and you can't seem to release them. And therefore, it's very hard to get anything inside the vagina. And sometimes it's actually just impossible. So that's what vaginismus is. So going back to the dilemma, my last relationship essentially ended because of it. I was too scared to get professional help and my partner ran out of patience because I was doing nothing to sort it and I can't blame him. Now I'm getting treatment. I'm seeing a pelvic floor physio and I'm definitely seeing progress. But I know there is quite a jump between being able to use a dilator and actually having sex with someone. I would love a relationship where I can explore sex with someone I feel safe with. But the issue is I can't pluck up the courage to put myself back out there. I worry so much about how potential partners will react when they learn about my condition. And I fear being judged or rejected because of it. I feel that they will see me as a burden or too much work. The thought of having to explain my condition to someone new terrifies me, and I often wonder if I'll ever find someone who can truly understand and accept me for who I am. I feel like I'm trapped in a cycle of shame and self-doubt, and it's holding me back from going after what I really want. I want to feel confident and empowered in my own skin, but it's hard when I feel like my body is working against me. How do I overcome these insecurities and put myself out there in the dating world, knowing that my condition may present challenges along the way? I want to feel like I'm worth the work and I want someone who will feel like this too. Oh, I really feel for this person. Too. And I hear this a lot. This is really, really common.
Yes.
One phrase that's just jumping out at me while I'm looking at it, I feel like my body's working against me.
Oh, I was just about to pick up that one too.
Did you feel that as well? Like, I think that puts perfectly into words how you feel when you have vaginismus.
Because I developed it, and the same as you, but like, so with my, not my current partner, but the partner before, I know he won't mind me talking about it, but we didn't know what was going on. Yeah. Like, it would just not work. And it was great at the beginning with me and him. And I don't know at what point it just stopped working. And I think our relationship also started to deteriorate in some way, but also I think it was triggered by, I was getting like these vaginal sores and we thought it was herpes. And then I felt that shame around the fact that maybe I had herpes. A doctor told me it was herpes and it kept coming every few weeks. It was so painful. And then I went to another good doctor and she looked at, she's like, there's no way these are herpes. Herpes doesn't like reoccur this fast. And she went and tested it. She's like, it's not herpes. It's like really bad thrush.
Okay.
Through friction, basically. And so basically, obviously, the skin must have been thinner. I'd have sex and it would bring it on.
Yeah.
But I think that triggered a fear around sex, that every time I have sex, I'll get these sores.
Yes.
So I think that triggered something that maybe was always there. And then it's just so hard because then, you know, he wants to have sex, but I would start to go, oh God, what if it happens now? Like, what if I get the vaginismus thing? So I did some Googling, and that's the only reason I found out. Okay, there's a thing called vaginismus. That's probably what I have, which is caused by trauma sometimes. So I was like putting it all together myself. I was asking friends. The friends I had at that time had no clue what I was talking about. They had never felt it. I wasn't even talking to too many friends because I was so embarrassed as well. And then what was worse is that, like, yeah, your boyfriend, you can feel he wants to and you want to and your brain, like you said, wants to, and you're there and you love him and he's there and it just doesn't work. And then you can see his guilt start because he's like, she doesn't feel safe with me. She doesn't want me. And then you're like, oh no. And so what I would do to stop it is I just shut down all like sex then because I was like, well, sex always turns into him getting upset and then me trying to make him feel better. Yeah. And then me feeling guilty for making him feel guilty. And we spiraled. And then every time he would, like, you know, maybe get hard or I'd feel him like, let's get into this. Yeah. I would be like, oh yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, but what if it happens again? And then it's going to be this. And obviously that's a vicious cycle because it is. The vaginismus that was there maybe a little bit now is like
being reinforced.
Oh my God, the nothing's moving then.
Yes. Yeah.
And it did impact, like, we were talking about tampons. So around that time, I found it really difficult to insert tampons. Yeah. I would have to like use lube just to put a tampon in. So everything was being impacted. But what she said there, it makes me sad because I could choke up now thinking about it. But I was like you said about looking back on young Grace. This was only in my late 20s, early 30s. So it was only a few years ago. But like the shame that I probably would have carried around sex anyways was just so deep, and I hated my body for not working. And I would literally react so badly. I would get up and I'd run to the toilet and I would just be like, what the fuck? Like, why aren't you working? Like, he's going to leave you. And there's the fear that, like, you know, he's going to leave me for someone else or he's going to cheat on me. Because of course he is if we're not having sex. Yeah. I mean, this is obviously, and I actually was like, I had settled on the fact that if he cheated on me, I wouldn't mind because he needs to be satisfied from somebody else. And then like our relationship slowly fell apart and we broke up. And like, I think that was a big factor because like sex isn't everything, but it does help connect you. Yeah. And we were so disconnected because of loads of other things. But that definitely was a huge instigator in the demise, let's say, of our overall relationship. But I also lost so much love for myself. And I'm still in that healing process. Like I went to therapy after our breakup. And a big part of it was trying to heal my relationship with my body because I genuinely hated my body. And I don't use that word lightly. And that makes me so sad that I could hate myself. But it comes up now. Like I still have it. Now I'm learning that I don't think I'll ever be, let's say, cured because it's just, I think it's my body's sort of, I have a heightened autonomic nervous system anyway. So I think I'm a really anxious person. Yeah. And so I think my body does things like I have really tight jaw. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just like my body's response to things. I have digestive issues. Like it's like tick the box of
physiological kind of
representations of anxiety in the body. And of course, vaginismus is going to be there. So any of my friends since who've come and like, it's so funny, they'll never talk to you unless you say it to them. Then they go, oh, I've actually got that too. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, but that fits the bill because they're also kind of an anxious person. But I thought I was like cured, and I was with my current partner and we'd been like sleeping together for a few months. And then one time I had told him about it. I did tell him that it used to happen to me quite a lot when I was with my previous partner. And we were, I think we were sleeping together for a few months and then it just happened and he couldn't get in. And then I like, you know, my heart rate goes up and I'm like, oh no, it's happening again. Oh, and I start to panic and I'm like, sorry, I think it's just, and he just held me and he was like, Aoife, we don't need to have sex. Like, this is enough. And he was like kissing me and he was like, I just want you to feel safe. And he was like, so like, this is enough. And he just held me and kissed me. And then all of a sudden I felt all my muscles relax and then we could have sex. But it was the way he just accepted whatever was happening to me in that moment, and he sort of made space for that and held me. It was so, I was crying at the time because I was like, oh, he like sees me, and I totally get her there, because even in that moment I was like, oh no, oh God, like he's gonna think I'm, you know, a problem or difficult. And it has happened like a few times, it does happen every few months still.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and it can still happen. It's not something that just, I think, you know, for some people it does, let's say, go away for the most part. It totally depends on, I suppose, why you're experiencing it, the treatment you get or don't get, the experiences you've had. I think even, you know, with that, your body working against you, because I've been there as well. I hated my body when I was younger. Like, the vaginismus was only part of it. There was body image stuff too. But yeah, just that feeling of, why won't you do what I want you to do? Like, what? Like, I want to have sex now. I'm also a very anxious person. I've had anxiety for most of my life, and have become much better at dealing with it. But again, woeful at a teen. I didn't really have the right support and whatnot. But what I try and do now with women who are really struggling with that narrative of that self-frustration, that anger at their body, is actually, even though this is really hard to kind of accept sometimes, your body's actually not working against you. It's actually doing what it thinks is best for you. And sometimes it can help to even talk to our bodies that way, as in like, okay, you're getting really tense right now. I know you're feeling really anxious. I know you think this is best for me. Thanks for looking out for me. And that can sound really strange, but actually, you know, just like kind of compare it sometimes to if a bit of food went down your throat the wrong way, your throat closes up and you gag. Like the vagina is tensing because it's trying to protect you. And it's not actually your body working against you. It's actually doing what it's supposed to do. Your body's actually supposed to naturally tense up in the hope of keeping things out, you know. It's not to say it works, and it's not to say it's pleasant, it's horrible. But I think sometimes if we can kind of flip that script a little bit and be like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. You're actually doing what you think is best for me.
And I think it's naming, like you said, so like in that moment with my boyfriend, when he did what you were asking, you know, we should be doing that for ourselves. So he was able to sort of soothe me in that way and say the words that I should be saying, like, it's okay and we don't need to have sex now. But now I'm more aware of when the vaginismus comes on, and it's such a strange thing, but it's when I don't feel comfortable and when I feel a bit rushed. And it'll be just like, I don't know, maybe whatever has happened that day. But like we'll start like, you know, doing a little bit of foreplay, and all of a sudden, I don't know why, but my brain is like, this, I don't want this right now. And I think before I would dishonor that, push my feelings aside because I don't want to be a problem. Why don't you want to have sex right now? Just get into it. Come on, he wants it. And you just start having that angry sort of pushy parent voice in your head. Whereas now I'm trying to like teach myself that, like, vocalize how you're feeling. So I might just say to him, I'm feeling a little bit rushed and I just don't want to. And he's so receptive to that as long as I'm honest. But if I'm forcing it, like, and I'm pushing my body, like you said, to do something it doesn't want to do, instead I'm trying to just honor in this moment right now, I just don't feel great and I don't feel comfortable. And then he'll be like, okay. And he'll just like hug me and he'll kiss me. And then when he's like, I just like being naked with you. And I'm like, that's enough actually. That's closeness. And even just me honoring my body and being honest with him, that's intimacy.
It is.
And that leaves, like, so we might not have sex in that moment, but like that will leave such a positive sort of imprint in my brain that the next time we go, I'll go to myself, look, if it doesn't happen, it's fine, because remember the last time you just had a beautiful moment being naked together. And that sort of takes the pressure off. But I'm trying, like, it even happened like last week where I don't know what happened to me. I was like, and then I just said it to him. I was like, I just feel a little rushed. The way he was kissing me, that was it. I felt like his kisses were too intense. Again, before, this is a partner of 2.5 years. You're still learning. What worked last week doesn't work today.
No, context is so important.
So important.
And that's that whole thing of listening and honouring your body, because it's going to change from minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day.
If you think about like with men, like I've been with men and I've slept with men the first time and they've had performance issues.
Exactly.
Like, and like even like my ex, like I remember one of my exes, he when we first had sex, I say the first 3 times, he definitely had performance issues. But what I loved about it is he communicated it immediately. And he said, look, this just happens when I'm with a new partner. Like, you know, don't worry, it's not you. But he immediately communicated what was happening. But I was with this other guy, this Irish guy, and he never communicated it with me. So we had just started sleeping together. He could, like, he had, I don't know, did he have erectile dysfunction? Was it just nerves? But like, honestly, we tried 6 times and he never said anything. We never were able to, and I never said anything because I didn't want to make him embarrassed.
Yeah.
But it didn't turn me, so what I want to say is like, if he had just communicated what was happening, then I would have been totally fine and we could have worked on other things. But because he didn't say anything, and a friend of mine was the same, she was with a guy for 3 months and he never once was able to get hard, but he never explained to her. So she was just like, well, I don't know what to do. But just to say that it doesn't turn people off. Like, I was happy to keep trying with him, this guy who I just met. My friend tried for 3 months with a guy who had erectile dysfunction. So I don't think it turns the other partner off, because men know, it's talked about just more that men have issues with performance. It's just not talked about from a woman's point of view. But I didn't know that I was like better, let's say, because my partner and I broke up. And then from my point of view, I had really bad vaginismus and we broke up. So I was like, I'm never going to be able to have sex with anyone again. So I started dating this like Argentinian guy, and he was so sexual, and I was like, oh God. But he was like, I will do anything. We don't have to have sex. It was just like, it was perfect. I was like, oh my God, I just need someone just to remove any stigma or shame. But because of that, it was so fun. But I told him immediately when we first started dating, before we slept together, I said, look, I have this thing called vaginismus. I might not be able to have penetrative sex. He was like, that's fine. He's like, but I can go down on you. I was like, yes. He was like, okay. He was like, grand. I was like, oh yeah, it is grand. And it is grand.
It is.
And eventually we did have sex. But what I liked was that he was just, what I learned was just communicating it immediately and being like, look, I have this thing. I might not be able to have penetrative. He's like, grant, let's do all the other fun stuff as well. And then you're like, oh yeah, sex can still be fun without penetration as well.
Oh, of course it can. In fact, a lot of the fun is more outside of the penetration. And it's actually something, a kind of a silver lining for myself having vaginismus, because I got really good at all the other stuff. Not as in like, oh, I'm so skilled, but genuinely I got really comfortable in oral and experimenting with anus, like everything, erogenous zones, like penetration is literally one part of a whole, like, you know, board of what sex can be.
Even kissing.
Oh
my God. I've got, like, me and the Argentinian guy, it was like, we just kissed for hours.
That is sex. Like,
that is sex. And like, I was trying to, like, with my current partner now, I'm trying to like teach him more about kissing, because I'm like, that's something that I learned from this other guy. And I was like, this slow, just discovering each other's lips. I could do that for hours and then feel totally satisfied. Like, I would love more conversations around the fact that sex doesn't have to be penetration. Yeah. It can be so much more.
Oh, 100%. It's something we see in the, like, sexology world. It's like the hierarchy of sexual acts. So if we think of this pyramid, and the top is penetrative, but penis and vagina sex, not anal sex, penetrative, P and V, which sounds so non-sexy. Sex is at the top, and then all the other stuff is kind of ranked underneath it. And it's absolute bollocks for one thing. Like, if you enjoy penetration, fabulous. Like, I do enjoy it. I love it. But in tandem with other things. Yes. And I'm now at the point where if my vaginismus did return, or I had some issues again, I know it wouldn't be like absolutely depressed 15-year-old Grace who thought she was like just a faulty product kind of thing. I would be like, okay, there's help out there. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with this. And there's 900 other things we can do that would be amazing. So for this lady, lady always sounds so like this lady. This lady, I would agree, and I would say be upfront from the beginning, because if they aren't fine with it, perfect. Get rid of them. Like literally, if they're like, if you're dating or having casual sex and there's any kind of, now someone mightn't be sure what it is, and might be like, oh, what's that? What do you mean? Or, you know. that's fine. But if they're trying to pressure you or saying things like, oh, you'll be fine, and maybe you just haven't been turned on enough, or, you know, trying to basically mansplain at you or anything like that, that's a great filter for just getting rid of people who you don't want to share a bed with anyway.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be considering your needs across the board sexually if they're not considering the basic principle of, I don't want you to be in pain.
Yeah.
Like, that should be the bare minimum, you know? So I think, I mean, there's no easy, oh, just say it. But you kind of do have to just own it, get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Don't internalize it as like this almost character trait that you have or part of your soul. It's just something that happens with your body and your brain sometimes. Like erectile issues, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I always find, and I say this to so many women I work with who have vaginismus, if you, particularly ones who are single, if you approach the situation thinking this is a burden and presenting it in this apologetic way, it can become a bit self-fulfilling. It can kind of make it sound like an enormous deal. Like it should be an enormous deal to the other person as well. And it's going to be this huge negative. And compared to coming at it like, oh yeah, this is something that goes on for me, but this is what I like to do, and this is what we can do to make it as comfortable as possible. Like, that's so reasonable.
Yeah.
That's good sexual communication.
Yeah. And it's like, I think it's what you said earlier. It's like your body, I think what I changed as well is like, your body's protecting you.
Yeah.
And like, I think back and I'm like, I forced myself to do things and I pushed myself into sexual situations that I definitely wasn't comfortable with. I think most of my 20s, honestly, most of my sex life in my 20s was me, like you said, gritted teeth, grin and bear it, get through it, seem like this, like fake all the orgasms, screaming, porn stars. It's
so grim when you think back.
Oh my God, it's so grim. And so if anything, I'm like, I think my vaginismus like late presentation was literally my body being like, we're sick of...
We're done with this.
We're done with playing. We're done with putting up with stuff. We're done with you performing and escaping your body. And me discovering my vaginismus was this... It was really tough, but it became a really beautiful return to self. And I think if I hadn't had vaginismus, I would have continued on a path of like... abandoning myself, because I abandoned myself not just physically and sexually. I had abandoned myself in so many ways throughout my 20s, and I think that's what happens to a lot of women in our early 30s, that like whatever we had been doing to survive starts to sort of expire, and then you're like, why is this not working anymore? And so you have like a choice to either face it or just keep going with these really unhealthy toxic things that you've learned to sort of cope with. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember I had this beautiful moment with my body, and we had to do this part of like one of the Jenny Keen's courses. It was about returning to, you had to learn how to sort of orgasm alone, and I've done that, like, but not in a beautiful way, in a very like, I'm horny, I'm just gonna get off, basically. Exactly. But it wasn't this beautiful thing. And I remember we had to like put our hands in our vagina. We did 30 days. It was like all this study, whatever. And then at the end, all these women, you can turn the camera on, off. It wasn't sexual. Everyone was just in their own space. And your hand, like the way you explore and your hand goes up. And she was like, oh, that's, you know, the vagina is sort of like the mother and the vulva, all of that. Your cervix, your mother. That's what she said. And you go in and it's sort of this mothering, nurturing place. And like, it's so weird to come, but your brain's not thinking about anything sexual. It's not thinking about any man or like porn. It's just like you're stimulating the right parts of your body. Yeah. My brain was just on my body. And it was just this like, I don't know, I sort of like enveloped myself in myself. And I remember just crying so much because like you said, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were wrong to my body. I thought you were broken. But when I look back, I'm like, no, I was put in situations I shouldn't have been put in. I am a more anxious person. I need more time. I'm really sensitive. But when you give me time, I am worth the work, like she said. And I want to be with men. I want to be with people, with friends. I want to eat food. I want to be in places that respect those parts of me. And I'm no longer going to basically suffer the consequences of abandoning myself. And I remember I just wept and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I forgot about you. Like, I forgot about, like, this is me to my body. And I wrote a letter to my body after that. It was called Dear Body. And I was basically, I swore to her, I'll not do that to her again. And so little glimmers come up where I want to abandon her again.
Yeah.
And then you go, no, honor it. You don't want to have sex tonight. You don't want to go out. You don't want to drink. Sometimes I feel pushed into drinking alcohol too. And that's something I've discovered. I don't like drinking alcohol that much. So it's like it fed into so many ways that women abandon our needs just to give it over to someone else. We give our power over to someone else. So I've started honoring it now, and I think she should. I think it's power to know yourself and to be like, and rather than seeing it as like, she used the word condition. I don't know if me myself, I don't connect with it. And like you said,
I don't either.
I don't. It sounds like a medical thing, and I would more see it as, like you said, it's a protective mechanism.
Yeah.
It's something that your body just doesn't want to right now. Honor that. And sometimes my body isn't able to have sex, but I can do other things and but I don't like it seem like it's this serious illness or sickness.
Yeah, exactly. I just think like this person, and I hope this doesn't sound patronizing, but you're in such a better era to be dealing with this. Yeah. In that there is more information.
Even us having a conversation about it.
Connect with other women there's the Vaginismus network, like connect with women who have vaginismus, and you'll find probably lots of single women there as well. Yeah. And actually it's funny just to even mention, I know we're being very heteronormative here, but you know, regardless of the gender, sex of your partner, they usually what they want, even on a sexual level, is pleasure and connection. It's not actually about penetration as the be-all end-all. And I know we've said that already, but just to reiterate that from someone who also works with men and works with couples where one partner has pain during sex, when one partner has pain during sex. So getting the other side of it is they have this guilt that we talked about of, I'm not satisfying him or them and they're not getting what they need. This language, I'm like, have they told you that? Or is this coming from you? And external societal pressures? Because if we actually have this conversation, you know, the way you mentioned with your partner, you kind of cut off everything completely because of that kind of, which happens all the time. And that's what happens. And then the other partner who doesn't have vaginismus or whatnot is so lonely. Yes. And they're like, fuck the penetration. Yeah. I just want to have a sex life with you, even if that doesn't include penetration. Yeah. But it's so interesting because the women I work with, sometimes they won't allow themselves to believe that or to like really just think that that's possible. It absolutely is.
And on that, one more thing, I thought that me and my ex broke up largely for a long time because of my performance issues, and that led to a demise. And as I said, that fed into it. But now that I'm with somebody who is, and I love my ex, we're still really good friends, but like I also think his triggers and trauma around sex like fed in, like we both had our own insecurities in different ways, and maybe he needed more. A lot of men as well need a lot of validation from sex, but that's not on us to provide that. I mean, if you need to constantly have sex to validate the fact that your partner loves you and that you're a good partner, that's not on me to provide that to you. And like my current partner obviously doesn't really mind. But I'm learning, you can be with somebody, you can have sort of this insecurity, you can have this maybe still residual shame, and they make space for that and they hold space for that. And I'm like, my ex-partner and I, we didn't break up because I wasn't good in bed. We broke up because he couldn't hold space for my stuff and I couldn't hold space for his stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
You know? And so if she is with a partner and eventually maybe the vaginismus does appear and it doesn't work out, I can guarantee it's not because of that, because the right person will still stick around and have fun going down on you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And all the other stuff, there's so many for the visuals. There's loads of toys behind us at the moment. There's so much you can do. Yeah. You know? Get creative. Having vaginismus made me a very creative sexual partner. I will say that. It did.
This show is part of Headstuff Podcasts. Here's another show you might like.
All right, how you getting on? It's me, Tony Cantwell from The Young Hot Guys, here to tell you about my solo podcast, Tony Cantwell's Hit Show, also available on Headstuff. What do? We talk about all sorts. I give you life pro tips. I had a recent podcast on the 40 worst chat-up lines you should never use. I had a podcast on having big feelings and how you overcome them to make decisions. I also like to talk about fun stuff I like geek culture, movies. I like to talk about the best Eurovision songs ever. Whoever are the hottest Disney animals. Believe it or not, it was not the Robin Hood fox, even though he's absolutely stunning, mate. I also have been failing constantly. I got into comedy quite late. I was sacked from 7 different jobs, and even to this day, I'm still failing. fail. And I'm married, I have 2 kids, and if you want to walk away from a podcast thinking, wow, at least I'm not as big a loser as him, I highly recommend listening to Tony Cantwell's hit show, available on Head Stuff.
Have you ever heard of a toy so powerful that it has made people orgasm through their clothes? Well, I have, and she does not mess around. The Doxy Massager is a big, strong, fabulous wand with a 3-meter power cord, so you have lots of room to work with. The wand massager provides super strong rumbling vibrations that really provide deep, intense stimulation into your body. Honestly, it's so powerful that I also use it as a massager for my neck and shoulders. It's available in different colours. It is a real powerhouse of a toy. And truth be told, you might want to make sure your neighbours aren't at home when you plug this one in if you share a wall. As always, grab your 10% off on playblue.ie using the discount code GRACE10. Enjoy! Guys, gals, pals, I hate to say it, but we are fast approaching the end of season 1 of the G-Spot. Time flies when you're having fun, and I hope you've been having as much as I have, because I've absolutely loved chatting to all my guests and getting all your lovely messages. The good news is I've been working very hard on some bonus episodes to hit the spot while you're waiting for season 2. You and I will be getting a lot closer over the next few weeks, as the bonus episodes are where I go into full sex coach mode. I'll be sharing knowledge, skills, tips and tricks with you, as well as some personal anecdotes, of course. By subscribing to Head Stuff Plus, you can access all this bonus content, enjoy an ad-free feed, discounts and freebies, and most importantly, support the G-Spot and help it to grow. You also get access to all the other brilliant shows on the Head Stuff network as well. All that for as little as $5 plus VAT per month. From busting the most common sex myths to teaching you how to be a better sexual communicator, I'm going to give you the sex education you've never had. Visit headstuffpodcast.com and subscribe today for an even better G-Spot experience. Chat soon. So, hi Grace, I'm a 38-year-old single woman. Okay, so we have 2 single women, so this is a nice team. Living in a pretty rural part of Ireland, and I can't shake this feeling of loneliness. It seems like everyone around me keeps saying how great it is to be single and how I should be enjoying this time on my own. But the truth is, I really want a partner. I've tried embracing the single life, going out with friends, focusing on my hobbies, even tried dating apps, but nothing seems to fill this void I feel inside. I see a lot of my friends in relationships, settling down, starting families, while the single ones seem to be having a ball, travelling, having casual sex, doing lots of work on themselves. That's in inverted commas there. I know I shouldn't compare myself to others, but it's hard not to when everyone around me seems to have it all figured out. People who do say that they are single and miserable seem to be dismissed and judged really harshly. Like, people don't want to be around them, and I don't want to be part of that group either. I feel everyone is either happily in a relationship or single and thriving. And I'm getting so pissed off with it. Is it not okay to hate being single? So I'm just laughing at the way it's phrased. Just like, that's, or am I missing something? I can hear this person saying it. I want to find love and companionship, but I also don't want to rush into anything. But I'm also absolutely sick of the single life. What do I do? Yeah, so this is going to be one where we're absolutely not going to have a straight answer, except maybe to,
where does she live, by the way? Is this
it just says rural? It says rural
okay,
Ireland.
So it's a small area.
And I'm from Kerry. I have a lot of friends who live rurally. Well, I suppose most of Kerry is quite rural, but some parts are more than others. It is definitely a bit trickier to meet someone. That is just statistically, it's just literally less people. You see the same sometimes, people doing the rounds on Tinder, like, do you know, or Hinge and whatnot. But going back to, is it not okay to hate being single? Like, it is. Mm-hmm. It is, like, you know, those 2 groups she's described of kind of people who are in relationships or settling down, starting families. And then the other group is single but thriving, travelling, riding around them basically, casual sex, having fun, lots of work on themselves. Like, a lot of people aren't going to feel they fit in with either group.
Yeah, it's a really good... It's made me think now, because I'm like, it's so easy to be like, just go travel, honey, like embrace your single life.
Yeah.
But if she doesn't connect with that form of life, like, why is that the only version of single that's out there as well? Like this, like, empowered baddie. Like maybe she's just also not single. I think it's recognizing that some women are not single by choice. And there's this new movement of women that are saying, I'm single by choice. And that's the people she's describing. And that's amazing. But it's also, there are still some people who are not single by choice. And it's recognizing that as well, that it's like, I suppose she's not saying she hates being single. I suppose she's saying she wants to be in a relationship.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's more positive language.
Way to frame it. Yeah. I think it's quite taboo for people, particularly women, maybe people in general. I suppose I just probably, because I am a woman and most of my friends would be women. I think there is a taboo around saying that you actually really want a partner, if that makes sense.
Maybe this day and age, yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's accepted that most people probably, yes, do want to be either now or in the future in a happy relationship. If they want to have kids, that's usually probably the way they want it to happen, etc. Right? I think that's fair enough to say that. But at the same time, I do notice a kind of instant knee-jerk reaction, because I do it myself. If I have a friend who is like seemingly obsessed with kind of, I don't have a partner and you all have partners and I haven't found anyone, there's no one there, and am I ever going to meet someone? And my knee-jerk reaction is, you will meet someone and like enjoy being single. And I'm like, but okay, that sounds fine, but it's not really listening to them. It's not really hearing what they're saying. If they really, I think it just speaks maybe to a loneliness or maybe something being internalized here of why haven't I.
But I suppose what's coming from me listening to this, because it's like took a minute, because it's quite like, oh yeah, this is the way she's framing it is not something that you usually hear it. Like, I hate being single. Yeah. Like, there's an honesty there, which I actually applaud her for really appreciate knowing and being able to put it into words, like, go you. But I suppose for me, I'm like, I'm all about like tapping into the feeling. So like, and you can always work on that rather than the thought, let's say. So it's like loneliness could be not born of her not being in a relationship, but not being in a friendship group that like currently satisfies her needs or her personality or the way she is now. Like, I have friends back home and they're so lovely, but if they were my only friends, I would absolutely crack up. I have so many different groups of friends. Yeah. And as when my partner and I broke up a few years ago, it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I had this group here in Dublin, and they were just nowhere to be seen. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, are they just like my fun time friends? Yeah. Which I realized they kind of were. Yeah, yeah. And I went on the hunt then. And there was a few little things they had done that like it made me feel a little insecure. So I literally went on the hunt for more friends that maybe matched where I'm at this stage of my life. I'm still friends with that group. We go to festivals together, we dance, we have loads of fun. Yeah. But I needed like a confidant. Yes. And I went on the hunt because a lot of friends I had made, a lot of my long-term friends from college, from school, had all started having babies. Yes. And I had just been dumped at 33 in the middle of a pandemic. I was like, I need something more. And now I have this other group of friends in Dublin, and I've made more friends through like comedy and like I feel like there's no end to the friends you can make. Yeah. And through that, oh my God, are you going to meet people? Yeah. But like, I think, I hate to, because I don't want it all to be about finding a romantic relationship, because it sounds like loneliness can be fulfilled with just relationships. And if you meet someone through that, that's great. But I think we don't celebrate friendship enough and how much that can satisfy a lot of our loneliness. And you don't have to stay friends. This is a weird Irish thing that we have. Like, you stay friends with the schoolgirls or the girls you had. Like, I went on a date the other night with this guy I met, a comedian. He's 55 years of age. He has 2 kids. He's married. And my boyfriend was at home. And I was like, I'm going out to meet like Johnny. And he was like, lol, your best friend Johnny, who's a 55-year-old man. But I love him because also he's had his kids. So we don't talk about kids. Yes. And because he's a man, we talk about like, oh, these other fun things. I love hanging out with him. Yeah. And like, because he's gone through the child rearing stage, that's all done. I have some gay friends. They don't want to have kids. So that's amazing as well. Yeah. Honestly, just like enrich your life with all kinds of, another lady in Kerry has invited me, she's an artist and she's 70 and she's like, come visit me. I was like, I actually will go visit her. Yeah, absolutely. So just life is so full of interesting characters and you've changed. And because you don't connect with this group that are off, like, you know, traveling. And to be honest, they sound like a group that I also wouldn't connect with either. So try and meet people that match more with your vibrations. Yeah. That would be my first instinct. maybe you can tackle more the romantic side of it. But that would be my first instinct listening to that.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with everything you said there. And like that, I have different friend groups who, and again, it takes work. You know, it absolutely takes work to find people and to sustain friendships. And like that, they bring so much to my life in different ways, and hopefully vice versa. And I think it's great that she said, like she did say at the end, I don't want to rush into a romantic relationship either. So I think actually, you know, she's in a quite balanced place. It's just she's struggling with where she is. It sounds like comparison to the two groups. There was a few shoulds in there, you know, should be enjoying single life, should be traveling and blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't have to go traveling just because you're single. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's we have these really set ideas about when things should be done by and what period of your life we should do them in, etc. And yeah, I think there's obviously, though, there's something she's struggling with there, as you said, a feeling. And I think it's good to have an outlet for that, but not to let it consume your whole life. Because to be honest, it is like, if all someone talks about is how they're single and they're never going to meet someone, like, it does get old. It's like if I was coming and giving out about my partner every day, you'd be like, oh, Grace, like, you know, you need to change something about that, because it's like, it's feeding into every area of your life. So I would say for her, just to do a bit of reflection on that, of like, is this just a bit of a vent? Maybe you have a therapist, or maybe you journal, or maybe you have that one friend that you can comfortably vent to. Yeah. And just have those outlets for when you are feeling fucking sick of being single.
But I suppose why do people want to be in romantic relationships is always what I ask people these days. If it's to have children, I really feel that's a different talking point, because
it is. That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast, because that's different. That's like, yeah, you do have to think time-wise, and you do need to be a bit more pragmatic about your choices, etc. So that's, if she's slightly older, maybe this isn't on her radar. Maybe she's just talking about being in a romantic relationship.
Yeah, she hasn't mentioned children.
And she doesn't sound like she's in a rush. So that's why I'm like, I feel like maybe it's not on her radar. Yeah. But in any case, so if that's not the case, then you ask yourself, okay, why? Because I have loads of friends like this who are obsessed with being in a relationship. And like, you know, my followers will message me now that I kind of didn't want to tell people I was in a relationship, because I was kind of like happily single. Yeah. And now they've started
attached to that label though.
And now they've messaged me being like, how did you, like, I've had a few girls message me, be like, oh, you know, I'm happily single, but also not. And I want to be in a relationship. Can you give me some tips? How did you meet him? Yada, yada, yada. But I always ask them, why do you want a partner? Is it for sex? Is it for comfort? Is it just to have someone to do stuff with? And I actually think the third part is the majority of the answers, because it's like you want somebody on the weekends to be able to do stuff with. My partner and I, like I said, we're doing long distance, and we might be doing long distance for years because of where my career is going. He's not leaving his home. So we almost broke up over this. And I was like, look, I'm really happy having a relationship where I only see you once or twice a week, once a week actually. And honestly, I'm too busy midweek. I have such wonderful friends. We do loads of things together. If we broke up tomorrow, I'd be heartbroken. I'd miss him. But would my life change much? No, because it's still so full without him. And I think like, I don't want it to be this thing that you have to go travel and you have to like, because when I'm single, I'm not, that's why I said I don't connect with that other group, because I wouldn't have been one for going and sleeping with loads of men. Women do that, like more power to them. It's just not what I do. I'm not a big drinker, so I wouldn't be going like clubbing. And I did all my traveling in my 20s. I'm over it now. I don't want a backpack. I want a nice hotel room. Like, no, and I want a comfy bed in an Airbnb. So like, I also feel for her there. But what I've started doing is I just started like doing more like hobbies. I'm really pushy with friends. Like, I met a girl through a friend, and she seemed so cool. And I literally stalked her. I found her on Instagram. I said, hey, Angelica, you know, you seem cool. Do you want to go for a coffee? Like, as if I was asking her on a date. And she was also, she had just fallen out with her entire group of friends in Dublin. And she was like, oh my God, I'd love to. And then another girl had sort of lost friends too. And I sort of saw that. And I was like, hey, Becky, do you want to be? Like, I literally just like I have no qualms about literally going up to people. I'm like, you seem cool. Like in the playground when you're younger, do you want to be my friend? Yeah. So I've started being really bold with my choices with friends. And I'm just like, I'm going to keep expanding this group outward and make my life full with or without a partner. Yeah. And it sounds so patronizing to be like, don't worry, you'll get there. But like, I think if your life is full, in the capacity you want it to be, and whether that's doing hobbies and meeting people through that, or whatever it is that makes sense to you, do that. And I sound so hippie, but you will attract.
Yeah. No, but you do.
A relationship you want in that way.
I started doing that a few years ago, where I just started asking people, as you said, to hang out. Or even like my work is a great vehicle for that. Yeah. That's how I asked you.
I was going to say, this is how me and you connected.
I was like, Aoife seems so cool. She'd be great for it. And then I'm like, she won't want to do it. I'm like, no, Grace, ask her. Yeah. She can say no if she doesn't want to do it. Yeah. Do you know? So it's like, yeah, I know the phrase putting yourself out there can like put the creepy crawlies in people, but it kind of is what it is. Yeah. Like, you know, when she said, I've tried everything. I've tried embracing the single life, going out with friends, focusing on my hobbies, even trying dating apps. And I'm not saying she hasn't tried that and put her all into it, but reflect on it. Were you doing those things to tick the box? You know, were they hobbies that truly enrich you, excite you? Your friends, what are your friends like? Do you like your friends? That's a whole other podcast episode. You know, I meet people who are in friendship groups. I'm like, how are you still in this group? They're not even that nice to you. Yes. They judge everyone, and they judge you too. Yeah. I'm not saying, again, I'm projecting. Yes. But, you know, we don't know what's behind these words of, I've tried embracing the single life. Maybe it's trying a different way.
That's what I mean. But I also think she's trying to embrace the single life that her single friends that she has are doing.
Are telling her.
And they're the ones probably who go to the pubs and they meet the boys and they go drinking, they travel. And that's great. But like, that's what I'm saying. That's not a life she's currently connected to.
No.
So it's funny how I think she's tapped into something that we've done as a society, where we've said, okay, women don't only have to be defined by their relationships, and women can be single too. But if you're single, like you said, it's traveling.
Yeah.
It's being, having casual sex. There's no like other version of being single, I think.
It's what just came to me there is you said that single thing of traveling, thriving, running businesses, the whole lot, it's proving you're fulfilled.
Yeah.
It's we're trying to prove something.
Yeah.
Can you not be single and just not doing much?
Yeah.
That's allowed.
Yeah.
You don't have to be single and thriving.
Yes.
You can just be single and existing.
Sounds exhausting.
If that's where you need to be right now.
Sound exhausting. I would find that like, really, really exhausting.
Because when you're in a relationship, like, no one's asking me to kind of prove me and Ivan are happy or that I'm happy in a relationship. Now, I suppose there is a pressure to put on this in general. We try and, as a society, kind of put the best feet forward and do our couple picks and whatever. Couple goals, all that nonsense. I hate it all. But there isn't the same level of scrutiny, I don't think, as when you're single, that there is that... like I openly admit I don't like traveling on my own.
No.
I can see why people love it.
Yeah.
Anytime I've done bits of it, I didn't like it. And there's a few factors that come into that. But I'm not saying I need a partner to travel. I actually do most of my holidays with friends.
Yeah, me too.
I think me and Ivan have only been away once.
Yeah, my partner hates traveling. He hates flying. He doesn't want to do it.
Yeah,
so like you need your friends for all these things anyways.
Yeah.
So I just think if you focus on, like you said, on trying to be like, on not being single. Actually, when people ask me, when men, a lot of time, like male followers will message me, like, are you single? I actually hate the word single.
I never get that.
It's because I don't share John enough.
I'm resentful.
I've started sharing him a little bit just so these questions wouldn't be coming in. But like so they'll ask this, or some girls will ask it too. And I actually hate the word single. So it's funny she picked up on that, because I feel like single means...
That's so
not in a relationship. Yeah. And I'm like, I just don't want to be defined by my marital status, because being like not in a relationship means you're single. So it's you're still being defined by not being in a relationship. You're either in one or you're not.
Yeah, it's like the absence of one.
That's it. And it's like, we're trying to be non-binary more with everything we're doing. This isn't very sort of non-binary. If anything, it's very binary still. Oh, yes, girl, be like single. But like, they're still going out. They're still sleeping with men. So you're still being defined by not being in a relationship. So I actually just never answered the question. I said, I hate that word, being single.
Yeah,
I just try not to
really
identify with my marital status. Whether I'm in a relationship or single, it's so irrelevant. Ask me anything else. Ask me about how I survived, losing my mom at a young age. Ask me about my trauma. Ask me about my hobbies, my passions. Ask me about all my insecurities. Ask me about how I feel when I go hiking or when I'm lonely. Ask me anything. Ask me about my fears. Don't ask me,
I know,
am I either in a relationship or not in? And I feel like she's stuck in that dichotomy. Not because of it's her fault.
Understandably.
It's not her fault. We live in a society that still pushes you into either or mentality.
Before you finish up, you had put, I wanted to ask you about this. You had made a joke that you and your partner nearly split up over. Was it a shell or a rock? And like clearly I could see it was a joke. Did you get loads of people?
Oh my God. People who were like, if you're arguing like that over simple things, you need to look at the dynamic of your relationship because it's just not healthy. And someone sent me a literal essay about how
I can feel my blood pressure. I get so
Oh my God, I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed. That's why I posted a real sassy retort. And even when I posted the sassy retort of like, oh, we didn't break up and we're not breaking up over a rock. Someone was like, you've got sassy. I was like, yeah, because the internet is so annoying. Again, with the binary, I was like, we dichotomize everything. You've had an argument. We've lost control of the nuance. We don't know how to hold the middle in conversation, in relationships, in identity. Everything is split. Everything is polarized. And honestly, the way that lady feels is just indicative of the where we're at as a society. It's a pick this or that.
It totally is.
We've lost the conversation around like, well, you can be single and hate it sometimes. You can also love it. You can also want a partner sometimes and then not want one. We've lost this sort of nuance in the middle. And so you can argue with your partner over a friggin' rock and not want to break up with them.
Absolutely. It's what that is though. Now, I experienced that to the much lesser degree as I do have a smaller page, which in a way, to be honest, I'm realising more and more is kind of a blessing at times, to be honest. Like I used to be before, but like, oh, I wish I could grow it a bit. Now I'm like, do you know what? It's actually grand. It does the job and I don't get a lot of nonsense. But it is pure and utter projection. It's all it is. And I think that's what people, all of us, are doing so much of the time is we're just projecting, and especially online and comments like that. And, you know, I have people as well where I might be talking about open relationships. I might be talking about, oh, it's totally normal to fantasize about other people. And, you know, or I might be just trying to normalize something that I know, not just from a personal, but from a professional point of view, is fucking normal. And I'll have people, you know, now and then being like, if someone's truly happy in their relationship, they shouldn't blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're just, if you were, because often they'll be like, I'm in a relationship and I never do that. And I would never dream of doing that. And I'm like, great, that's good for you. If you were really that happy and secure in your relationship, why are you online questioning how other people are happy and secure in a different way in their relationships? It's like the lady doth protest too much. Like, you know what I mean? It's, you're kind of telling on yourself. Every time you're, and I'm not saying those people are trolling you, but, you know, anytime you're sending even because trolls aren't always the people calling you ugly. They're also the people who are sometimes just being snarky and patronising. And
that's it, patronising.
Which is still, you know, you're a real person seeing that coming in on your phone. You're like, I don't need this.
Mansplaining
like,
of how a relationship works. I was like, if you don't have sense of humour, I can't. And that's what I wanted to say is like, actually what will keep a relationship together is a sense of humour. Is your ability to
pick your battles.
To laugh over the fact that you were bickering over a rock. And we kept calling it Rockgate like for the rest of the day. And that is funny. And then other people did comment. And it's funny because other people in relationships loved it because they're like, oh my God, hard relate. I thought I was the only one who had silly arguments with my partner. And also probably in that moment I did want to break up with him, of course. A split second I was like, why am I with someone who doesn't appreciate the beauty
Our
around
values
him?
don't align.
And you do have moments, again, the nuance where I'll have a passing I was like, I shouldn't be with him, and he tried to kiss me. I was like, go away. And I was like, I'm going to break up with him. And then obviously 10 seconds later that moves away. You're like, of course I'm with him for other reasons. It's just like, like I said to you, it's this sort of polarized opinions that we have about everything in the world. And unfortunately, relationships and human beings, we're so complex. And we need to allow, we're messy. We need to allow so much space for our complexities to unfold. And it's difficult these days. I think it's hard.
And you were right in the end about the rock, were you?
Technically I wasn't.
Okay.
So a geologist messaged me being like, because basically I thought the rock was so, it was just, I'd never seen anything. It was huge.
It was really
white.
unusual.
It was this big and it was like really smooth.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, John. And he's like, I've seen loads of those. I was like, there is no way you've seen loads of these. Anyway, so because I put it on the internet, like loads of people messaging, and one guy was like, I'm a geologist. Can you send me a picture of it? And I sent it and he's like, I'm so sorry to say, but the name of that is common beach stone. The word common was there. I was like, oh no. And then I posted that up to be like, don't tell my boyfriend. But then someone else commented and said, that doesn't mean he was right, because just because it's called common doesn't mean it isn't rare and beautiful. Fair. And your ability to see something as beautiful is what makes it unique. And she was like, so actually, you're still right. And I was like, I am right.
We'll take it.
I'll take it as long as I'm right at the end.
Okay, well, look, thank you so much. We've gotten into all kinds of things there, vaginismus, being single, it's so much. Petty arguments, relationship with our bodies. I can't even remember, but loads of other good stuff.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. A huge thank you to Playblue, Ireland's favourite adult store, for sponsoring this episode of The G-Spot. You can browse through their impressive selection of toys, lingerie and lots more sexy essentials at playblue.ie.
This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network, a hub for the creative and the curious. Shows are produced in association with Head Stuff and the Podcast Studios Dublin. Find out more or become a member at headstuffpodcasts.com.